"We're not your ATM anymore," Mom snapped, her voice sharp with smugness. Minutes later, my entire world flipped upside down. "Stay with me while I open up this part of my life, and if it speaks to you in any way, don't forget to show some love to the channel. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share it with the people who matter to you." My name is Amara Johnson. I'm 24 years old, a grad student juggling classes and a part-time job just to survive. For years, I've been the one holding my family together. Every month, without fail, I sent money home. Sometimes it meant skipping meals or buying the cheapest noodles I could find. Still, I kept doing it because I believed my parents truly needed me. Ever since I was old enough to work, the message was drilled into me: family comes first. That usually translated into Amara comes last. I paid electric bills when the lights were about to go out, covered groceries when the fridge was empty, and even helped with rent when things got tight. I told myself it was worth it, that my sacrifices meant stability for the people I loved most. But then came the moment that tore my trust apart. One evening after class, I stopped by my parents' house. I had just deposited the latest chunk of my paycheck into Mom's account. She sat at the kitchen table scrolling through her phone, looking far too relaxed for someone who always claimed the family was drowning in bills. "Mom," I asked carefully, "did the landlord finally fix that leak? You said you were behind on rent." She looked up at me, then smirked like I was a fool. "Oh, don't worry about it. Tobias needed the money more." My stomach dropped. Tobias, my younger brother, the golden boy, the one who never lifted a finger, yet somehow always had the newest sneakers, flashy watches, and even a new car. I froze in disbelief, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "Wait, you gave him the money I sent for rent." Mom crossed her arms like she had every right. "He deserves a chance too, Amara. He can't get by the way you do." I felt heat rush to my face. "I've been working myself sick while you lie to me about overdue bills? I thought you needed me." She shrugged, her tone sharper than a blade. "We're not your ATM anymore. You can't just throw money at us and expect gratitude." The irony was almost laughable, but nothing about it felt funny. Her words hit harder than any slap. It wasn't just about money. It was about years of sacrifices, years of believing I was holding the family together while, in reality, I was nothing more than a convenient wallet. In that moment, the illusion shattered. My own mother, the person I thought I was saving, had chosen to use me and then dismiss me like I didn't matter. And Tobias? He was living in luxury while I was barely surviving. That night, I realized the truth. I wasn't part of a family. I was their bank, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could keep playing that role. When I think back to my childhood, it feels like my whole life was one long lesson in sacrifice. We never had much growing up. The house was small, the bills always late, and the fridge often carried more air than food. I learned early on that if something needed to be done, it would probably fall on me to do it. My brother Tobias never carried that weight. From the moment we were kids, he was treated differently. He was the golden child, the one who could make mistake after mistake and still be defended by Mom. If he failed a class, she'd say the teacher was unfair. If I got an A instead of an A+, she'd ask why I hadn't pushed harder. The difference between us was like night and day. By the time I turned 16, I was already working after school just to help keep us afloat. My first job was at a diner, where I stayed late wiping tables while Tobias played video games at home. Later, I picked up shifts at a local grocery store too. There were weeks where I barely slept, dragging myself through homework between shifts, while Tobias spent weekends with friends, blowing whatever money he had on sneakers and the newest gadgets. Mom used to tell me, "Family comes first, Amara. We all have to pitch in." But somehow those words always meant me. If the electric bill was late, I was the one covering it. If groceries were short, I was the one pulling out tips from my pocket to stock the fridge. And when rent came up and Dad's paycheck wasn't enough, it was me who handed over my envelope of savings. Tobias, on the other hand, never once had to skip a party or a purchase. He got new shoes while mine had holes. He drove around in cars my money had helped repair, while I was taking the bus home from late shifts in the cold. Yet, in Mom's eyes, he was the one who needed understanding, while I was expected to be the strong one who never complained. I remember one night in particular. The lights had been cut off again. I had just come home from the diner, exhausted, and found Mom crying at the kitchen table. Without hesitation, I handed her the cash I'd been saving for college applications. She thanked me, hugged me, and promised it would be temporary. That same week, Tobias showed up with a brand new pair of sneakers. When I asked how he could afford them, he smirked and said, "Don't worry about it." That was the rhythm of our lives, me breaking myself apart to hold everything together, while Tobias floated above the mess, protected and spoiled. At the time, I told myself it was just what a good daughter did. But looking back, I realize it was the perfect setup for the betrayal that would come later. I was trained to give, and he was trained to take. And Mom made sure it stayed that way. It happened on a rainy afternoon when I stopped by my parents' house after class. I was looking for a folder I had left in my old room, but what I found instead burned me from the inside out. On the kitchen counter sat a stack of envelopes and papers, messy and half-opened. I wasn't trying to snoop, but one receipt caught my eye, a bill for a luxury car repair. The name on it was Tobias. My chest tightened. That couldn't be right. Just last week, Mom had called me crying, saying they were behind on rent again and that the electricity might be shut off. I had skipped groceries that week, surviving on instant ramen, just so I could transfer her the money she said they desperately needed. And yet, here was proof my emergency money went straight into fixing Tobias's shiny car. I picked up another slip from the pile, a receipt from an electronics store. Thousands spent on a gaming console and accessories. Another one showed charges for a beachside resort vacation. My stomach turned as the realization sank in. They weren't drowning in bills. They were drowning in Tobias's lifestyle, and I was the one keeping him afloat. The anger in me boiled over. I marched straight into the living room, clutching the papers in my hand. Mom was there, folding laundry as if everything was normal. "Do you want to explain this to me?" I demanded, my voice sharper than I intended. She looked up, startled, then frowned when she saw the receipts. "Amara, put those down. You have no right." "No right." I cut her off, shaking the papers. "I've been working myself sick, skipping meals, worrying about rent, because you told me we couldn't survive without my help. And all this time, you've been handing my money to Tobias so he can play king." Her expression hardened, the softness in her eyes vanishing. "You'll always be fine, Amara. You've got your education, your job. Tobias needs more help than you. He deserves to have a life too." Her words sliced me open. "So I don't deserve one? I'm just supposed to work and hand it all over while he spends it on toys and vacations." Mom didn't flinch. If anything, she grew colder. "That's enough. You're ungrateful. Family takes care of each other." I laughed bitterly, though there was nothing funny in the moment. "No, Mom. I take care of everyone. And you let Tobias waste my sacrifices without even blinking. For years, I thought I was the backbone of this family, the one holding everything together. But in that moment, I realized the truth. I wasn't a daughter to them. I was a bank account with a heartbeat. The boiling point had finally arrived, and I could feel something inside me snap. I had given them everything, and still it was never enough. When I left my parents' house that night, the sky felt heavier than my chest. The rain was still coming down, and I barely noticed that I was soaked through. My hands were shaking as I gripped the steering wheel, but it wasn't from the cold. It was from the weight of everything that had just unfolded. For the first time in years, I saw my family for what they really were. And it broke me. By the time I reached my small apartment, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I sat on the floor with my back against the door and cried like a child. Ugly, gasping sobs that made it hard to breathe. I kept replaying my mother's words in my head. "You'll always be fine, Amara. Tobias needs more help than you." It echoed like a cruel joke. How could she say that after everything I had given up? After all the nights I worked double shifts, after all the meals I skipped, after all the dreams I had put on hold? The betrayal stung more than I could put into words. I thought family meant support, love, and sacrifice for each other. But in my family, it only meant me sacrificing. I was nothing more than a resource, a lifeline they felt entitled to drain. The realization tore me apart. I must have sat there for an hour before my phone buzzed. It was Danielle, my best friend since high school. She always seemed to know when something was wrong. I answered, my voice cracked and weak. "Danny, I can't do this anymore." Within half an hour, she was at my door, holding takeout and wrapping me in the kind of hug I hadn't felt from my own mother in years. She didn't ask right away. She just let me cry into her shoulder until I could breathe again. When I finally explained everything, the words spilled out like poison I needed to release. The lies, the receipts, the confrontation, my mom's cold dismissal, it all came rushing out. Danielle listened quietly, her face tightening with anger the more I spoke. When I was done, she set the takeout down and looked me dead in the eye. "Amara, you have to stop. They don't value what you do. They're using you. Her words hit me harder than I expected. But they're my family, I whispered, my voice trembling. If I stop helping, what happens to them? What if everything falls apart? She took my hands firmly. Listen to me. What about you? You're falling apart. Who's helping you? You've spent your whole life saving them, and not once did they ask how you're doing. You deserve better than this. The truth of her words hurt, but it also stirred something deep inside me. For the first time, I let myself imagine a life where I wasn't constantly giving, where I could finally breathe without guilt crushing me. But the thought of cutting them off twisted my stomach. Could I really do it? Could I really walk away from my own family? That night, as Danielle sat beside me and reminded me of my worth, I felt torn in two. One half of me clung to the guilt, the other half whispered that freedom was possible. For the first time in my life, I started to wonder if loving myself meant letting them go. After that night, I started to change how I answered the phone. Calls that used to make me jump by now let go to voicemail. Texts asking for transfers stayed unread for hours, then days. It wasn't dramatic at first, just small pauses I told myself I deserved. Each unanswered ring felt like a tiny reclaiming of space that had always belonged to them. Clarissa noticed quickly. The first time she called and I didn't pick up, she texted twice, then called again from my dad's phone. When I finally answered hours later, her voice was sharp and breathless. Where have you been? We needed you today. I was working, I said, keeping my voice steady. I can't always drop everything. After everything we've done for you? She snapped. You're abandoning your family. The guilt trip was meant to sink its claws into me like always, but it felt different this time. The words landed, but they didn't break me. Instead, they made me look at all the times I had been blamed and yet expected to be the savior. Meanwhile, Tobias somehow seemed to get richer by the week. He rolled up in a car that looked brand new, laughing with his friends like nothing ever touched him. He'd send me pictures of trips and parties, captions bragging about living my best life. I was paying late fees on my own apartment while he posted videos of the stereo system I had bought for him a year ago. He didn't call to check on me. He called to show off. At first, I felt the hot sting of anger. I wanted to storm into their house, scream every truth I had found, demand apologies. But fury can be messy. I wanted something smarter. I wanted them to feel the gap they had created, to watch what happened when I removed the cushion they had always assumed would catch them. So I started to plan quietly. I made a list, small, practical steps that would not explode into drama, but would tighten their world in the ways they had tightened mine. I opened a separate savings jar in my mind, an idea more than a physical thing. Money that would stay mine, safe from guilt, from phone calls, from anyone else's needs. I sketched a simple budget that showed, in black and white, how much I really had and how little I had left to waste. I wrote down every transfer I had made over the past year, the dates, the amounts, the reasons I had been told. Seeing it all on paper made my stomach churn, but it also made my plan clearer. I stopped volunteering my time for free. When they asked for help moving furniture or borrowing cash for an emergency, I said I was busy, and I actually was. I took a few extra shifts at work, not to feed their needs, but to stabilize my own. Each extra hour I worked became an investment in my escape from being needed for the wrong reasons. Revenge, in my mind, wasn't about hurting them. It was about consequences. I wanted them to face the results of their choices when I no longer patched the holes. I wanted them to see what it looked like when the safety net was gone. Quietly, steadily, I set the stage. Graduation came with more than just a degree. It came with a door I had been waiting to walk through. After months of juggling classes, part-time work, and endless stress, I received a job offer that felt like fresh air after years of suffocation. The pay wasn't extraordinary by the world's standards, but to me, it meant stability. It meant I wouldn't have to ration instant noodles or worry about my rent being late. For the first time, I could breathe without debt pressing down on my chest. I didn't tell my family. In the past, every piece of good news I shared turned into another way for them to demand more from me. A raise meant, you can help with the mortgage. A bonus meant, Tobias needs new tires. This time, my win was mine. I celebrated with Danielle over pizza, and that was enough. The first thing I did with my new job was practical. I opened a fresh bank account, rerouted my paycheck, and closed the one my parents still had access to. Years ago, when I was younger and naive, I had given Mom my login details in case of emergencies. It started as a safety measure, But somewhere along the way, withdrawals appeared I never made, and excuses always followed. This time, I locked every cent behind passwords no one else knew. My money was finally mine. Of course, the peace didn't last long. A week into my new job, I came home to find Clarissa and Tobias waiting outside my apartment. Tobias leaned against the hood of his car, scrolling his phone without a care, while Mom stood there with her arms crossed like a queen demanding tribute. "We've been calling you," Clarissa said the moment I stepped out of my car. "Why aren't you answering?" "I've been busy," I replied flatly, moving past them toward the door. She followed me up the steps. "We need help. Tobias's insurance doesn't cover the repairs from his accident, and you know he can't be without a car." I turned around slowly, my keys tight in my hand. "Then he'll have to figure it out. I'm not paying for that." Tobias scoffed from the driveway. "Wow, really? You're just gonna leave us hanging? Selfish much." The word stung, but only for a second. I had carried their needs for so long that hearing them call me selfish almost felt laughable. Clarissa's voice rose. "After everything we've done for you, Amara, you're going to turn your back on your family now?" I met her eyes, steady and unflinching. "No, Mom. I'm turning my back on being used. I'm not your ATM. Not anymore." The silence that followed was heavy. Tobias shifted uncomfortably, but it was Clarissa's face that struck me. Her eyes widened, and for once she had no comeback. She recognized the words. I had taken her own cruel line and carved it back into her. I walked inside and shut the door, my heart racing but steady. For the first time, the ties were cut, and they knew it. It didn't take long for the cracks to show once I stopped paying their way. For years, I had been the invisible glue holding everything together, and without me, the pieces began to fall apart. The first sign came with Tobias's car. I saw it parked outside my parents' house one weekend, a bright sticker slapped across the window. Repossession. The car he loved to flaunt, the one he bragged about endlessly, was hauled away on a tow truck for the whole neighborhood to see. Tobias had always built his pride on appearances, and watching that pride roll down the street must have cut deep. But that was only the beginning. With no emergency deposits landing in Mom's account, the bills started stacking up. Late notices, overdue balances, threats from the utility company. Things they used to hand to me with teary faces were now their reality to face. For once, I wasn't there to clean it all up. It didn't take long for the phone calls to start. One night, Clarissa rang me, her voice shaking through the receiver. "Amara, please. We're drowning here. Tobias can't get to work without a car, and the lights might be shut off. You can't just watch your family fall apart like this." Her sobs had once been my undoing, but this time, I sat in silence, my jaw tight. "I told you," I said quietly. "I'm not your ATM anymore." And before she could twist the guilt deeper, I ended the call. My hand trembled, but it wasn't from doubt. It was from holding firm. Tobias, on the other hand, didn't cry, he raged. Danielle later told me she had seen him yelling outside their house, his voice carrying down the block. He was screaming at Mom and Dad, blaming them for everything. "You should have made her keep helping us. This is your fault. You ruined everything." The golden boy had lost his shine, and now he was turning his anger on the very people who had shielded him for so long. The image of my family cracking under pressure should have hurt me, but instead, it gave me clarity. For years, I had believed their survival depended on me. But now, without my help, they were unraveling, proof that their stability had never been real. It was built on my exhaustion, and without me, the foundation collapsed. Meanwhile, my life looked different. With no constant withdrawals, my paycheck stretched further than ever before. For the first time, I started a savings account with money that was mine alone. I cooked meals that weren't just instant noodles. I even began looking at apartments that felt like upgrades instead of shelters. Each small step felt like a breath of freedom I hadn't known I was missing. Their world was breaking apart, but mine was finally being built. The fallout wasn't just their burden to carry, it was my release. And as much as they called, begged, and blamed, I didn't bend. I was done paying for their mistakes. News of Tobias's downfall reached me in the most unexpected way. I was at work, sipping coffee between tasks, when Danielle sent me a screenshot of a local news post. There was his face, Tobias Johnson, listed among recent arrests for unpaid debts and reckless driving. The headline didn't surprise me. It almost felt inevitable, like a storm everyone saw coming except the people standing under it. I stared at the photo for a long time. My little brother, the golden child who had lived off my sweat and tears, was finally facing the world without a safety net. Instead of anger, I felt an odd calmness wash over me. For years I had imagined revenge as some grand dramatic act. But here it was happening on its own. Life was teaching him what I never could. That evening, my phone rang. The caller ID lit up with Mom's name. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but something in me wanted to hear what she'd say now. When I answered, her voice was frantic, swollen with tears. "Amara, it's Tobias. He's in jail. They're holding him for debts, and we don't have the money for bail. Please, you have to help us." Her words should have shattered me. Years ago, I would have emptied every account, sold my belongings, and handed her everything just to keep the family afloat. But now all I felt was exhaustion. "I can't," I said simply. Her sobs grew louder. "You can. I know you have money now with that new job. You can't turn your back on your brother like this. Family sticks together, Amara." I froze for a moment, the irony burning hotter than her tears. Then the words slipped from me, sharp and cold. "Stick together? You never stuck with me. You just stuck me with the bills." Silence fell on the line. I could almost hear her breath catch, the sting of truth settling between us. For the first time, I wasn't pleading, wasn't apologizing, wasn't bending under the weight of her disappointment. I was simply done. "Amara," she whispered finally, "please, he's your brother." "No," I said, my voice steady. "He's your son, and you both made choices. Now you get to live with them, just like I had to live with mine." I hung up before she could answer. My hands were trembling, but not with guilt. This time it was release. That night, I sat in my apartment, the quiet wrapping around me like armor. For the first time in years, I wasn't rushing to fix their mistakes. I wasn't sacrificing myself for someone who never appreciated it. I was simply watching from a distance as reality caught up with them. Revenge hadn't required anger or schemes. It had come in the form of silence, of refusing to carry burdens that weren't mine. Tobias was finally paying for the life he had lived, and Mom was finally learning that I wasn't their endless supply. It wasn't violent, it wasn't loud, but it was the sweetest revenge I could have ever asked for. The air felt lighter than it had in years when I sat across from Danielle at our favorite little cafe. The smell of fresh coffee and baked bread surrounded us, and for the first time in a long while, I wasn't distracted by buzzing phones or the knot of guilt in my chest. I was just there, present, sipping my latte while sunlight poured through the windows. Danielle leaned forward with that knowing smile she always had. "You look different," she said. "Not tired. Not weighed down. Free." I laughed softly, realizing she was right. For years I had carried an invisible chain that tied me to my family's demands. Every decision I made, every dollar I earned, was about what they needed. Now, without their constant pulling, I could finally hear my own voice again. "It feels strange," I admitted, stirring my cup. "Strange but good. Like I don't have to look over my shoulder anymore." Since Tobias's arrest, the calls from my mother had grown fewer and fewer. At first, she rang every day, desperate and demanding. Then, after my refusal to bail him out, her tone shifted to bitterness, accusing me of abandoning them. Eventually, the calls simply stopped. The silence, which once would have scared me, now felt like peace. Tobias hadn't tried reaching out at all. Maybe it was pride, maybe shame, or maybe he simply didn't know how to speak to me without asking for something. Whatever the reason, his absence was its own kind of gift. For the first time in my life, I wasn't bracing myself for his voice asking for money or bragging about something bought with my sacrifice. I told Danielle all of this, and she reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "That's because you finally chose yourself. You've been saving everyone else for so long, Amara. It's your turn now." Her words made me smile, but they also made me realize how far I'd come. I no longer lay awake at night wondering if my family was angry with me or if Tobias had what he needed. Instead, I thought about my own future, where I might travel, what I wanted to do with my savings, even little joys like signing up for a dance class I'd always been too busy for. The guilt that once ate at me was gone. In its place was a quiet strength, the kind that doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. My family had made their choices, and I had finally made mine. And for the first time, mine was about me. As Danielle and I laughed over pastries and planned a weekend trip, I felt a calm I had never known before. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was simple, steady peace. I wasn't their savior anymore. I wasn't their bank. I was just Amara. And that was more than enough. There was a soft knock at my apartment door, the kind of hesitant knock that already told me who it was. Months had gone by without a word, and I had started to believe the silence would last forever. But when I opened the door, there stood my mother, Clarissa, looking older, worn down, and desperate. Her eyes were puffy, her hands shaking as she clutched her purse. "Amara," she breathed out, her voice cracking. "Please, you have to help. Tobias, he's in danger. He owes money, he's mixed up with the wrong people. If you don't give me something, I don't know what will happen to him." I stood there, frozen in the doorway, staring at the woman who had once told me I would always be fine, that my brother's needs outweighed mine. The woman who had drained me dry and laughed while Tobias wasted everything I gave. And now here she was, one last time, asking me to save them. For a moment, guilt tugged at me, faint but familiar. I could almost hear the younger version of myself, the one who believed family comes first, whispering that maybe I should give in. But then I remembered every sleepless night, every instant ramen dinner, every time they had brushed aside my pain. Clarissa's voice grew sharper. "You're really going to stand there and let your brother suffer? After everything we've done for you?" Her words hit like knives, but they didn't sink in this time. I took a slow breath and met her eyes. My voice was calm, steady. "You're right, Mom," I said. "I'm not your ATM anymore." Her mouth opened, ready to fire back, but I didn't give her the chance. I gently closed the door, the click of the lock echoing through the hallway. My hands shook, but it wasn't from fear, it was release. I turned around and looked at my apartment. The sunlight spilled across the wooden floor, catching the edges of the new bookshelves I'd built, the framed photos of me and Danielle, the little potted plant by the window that I'd actually kept alive. My space. My life. For the first time, there was no shadow of obligation hovering over me. No constant demand waiting to break me down. Just silence, warm and steady. I sank onto my couch, pulling my knees close, and let out a long breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. The world outside kept moving, cars passing, voices in the distance, but in here it was peaceful. I wasn't the desperate daughter anymore, or the stand-in parent for Tobias, or the bank account my family bled dry. I was Amara Johnson, quiet, strong, and finally living for myself. And that, more than anything, felt like the beginning of my real life. Do you believe Amara made the right choice by closing the door on her mother for good, or should she have given them another chance? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd really like to hear your perspective. And if you enjoy powerful stories like this, remember to hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next one.